Now, the Philanthropy and Collaboration report context of Nigeria's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It examines key questions related to civil society's achievements and challenges in funding partnerships and program execution during the pandemic. And then we had embarked on this research using desk research, and we had looked at others within the sector who had written previous reports, their outcomes, their findings, but also conducted of 9 months localized to Nigeria. And totally we had about 65 respondents at that time in all as a pool of respondents. And then the kind of organizations we are looked through, we had 86% of organizations say identify as non-profit. These are implementing organizations who carry out work within communities. In certain aspects, they might be called community foundations. Then we had also had organizations, these organizations that were mainly run by individual philanthropists and, were both grant making and also implementing organizations. And then 6% identified as corporate foundations where they had corporate social responsibilities and they carried out CSR activities. All over the country, we had 58% of the organizations with activities in Lagos and some states and a few other states in Nigeria. Lagos is in the southwest part of the country. We have 4% of organizations with activities in Abuja, and then in Nigeria. Abuja is essential. It's also the capital of Nigeria for those who do not know, but it's essential. It is within the central belt of Nigeria and more in the north, right? And then for the survey, most of the organizations we found focused in education. Now, education as a sector one of the hardest within this time. Lots of schools had to close down due to and protocols are put in place. Also prioritize sensitization, actually having with those entrepreneurs and speak to them.
Sorry about that, everyone. Emma's network is really bad at the moment. I'm just trying to get her to switch off her video so that hopefully that helps with the connection. Emma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. So I'm going to
please can you put your video off and then you can continue. Hopefully that would help with the quality.
For sure. So please let me know if the screen is visible and then if I'm also audible. Just give me a quick thumbs up.
The screen is loading.
All right then.
Okay. So if you can just take it back just a pinch, because we didn't hear the last few things that you said.
All right then, of course.
Okay, brilliant. Over to you.
Okay then, so I had been saying that organizations focused during this time, 64% had focused mainly on education as one of the hardest hit sectors within the COVID-19 pandemic and up until now. 32% had focused on really supporting small and medium scale organizations during that time. Lots of persons tend to be entrepreneurs here in Nigeria, and a large percentage of that, those are women. So organizations had carried out interventions to support these women, to support enterprises during the lockdown because there have been issues with buying and selling, movement restrictions. inability to access goods and services had also really weakened businesses and really weakened families at the time. And then there were a timeline of other interventions were also done, but mostly, especially health, considering that it was the pandemic. And then COVID-19 group prioritized, a whopping 56% had prioritized, women and girls, mainly youth and children, 48%, then the elderly, and then 4% had prioritized internally displaced persons. So this data basically captures what organizations prioritized, groups that were prioritized during the pandemic, right? And so we saw a lot more interventions targeted at women, at young girls, and young people and then at the elderly, who are mainly the most vulnerable parts of the population. The interventions around this time were mostly around emergency relief, palliative provision, food, cash, clothes, and shelter. And then we also had interventions around small and medium scale enterprise support, and then a 4% around security and conflict resolution. Now, when we had asked, out of these interventions within these groups and communities prioritized, what kind of activities were nonprofits and philanthropists able to partner on, 74% of surveyed organizations actually partnered. Okay, out of 100%, who only 74% partnered, which is basically a majority, right? Almost 3/4, I mean. And then 36% partnered in education, for education interventions, 20% in healthcare, and 18% were spread over other sectors, which there is a rundown available. If you are interested in getting more information, please reach out to us. And this will also be made available in the report that is being created. And then the forms of partnerships that were actually undertaken, we found that 40% of the organizations acted as funders for other organizations to execute programs during the time. And then 26% received funding. Only 26% were able to receive funding to execute programs during the time. So leaving just roughly over 1/4 of organizations surveyed having the kind of funding that they would need to execute the programs that they needed to do. And then we also looked at partnerships between philanthropic foundations and nonprofits in Nigeria, and found that 45% of respondents believed that in the kind of relationships that were being had, there was need to have more inclusive collaborations between smaller nonprofits. And smaller nonprofits here mean really, from what we have seen, younger nonprofits who do not have that length of experience or wealth of experience at the time. 30% of organizations acknowledge that nonprofits and foundations occasionally collaborate to achieve shared objectives, while only 25% believed that partnerships between philanthropies and nonprofits occurred all the time. So moving on, we decided to look at the collaboration approaches, and 48% realized that they would prioritize collaborations with other nonprofit organizations, while 36% would prioritize collaborations with more corporate foundations and philanthropy institutions. And we cannot always understand that, because we're trying to see, with this data, we're trying to see, would more nonprofits be open to coming together to implement projects, or would they want to come together with a philanthropist or a philanthropy foundation instead? Would that be a better route for them? And for a greater number of them, the data reflected that they did believe that coming together with other nonprofits had more advantages in the long run. We also have, for the partnership, and there was a partnership and collaboration question, just to try and get insight on how best nonprofits would want to move forward. And 76% of respondents sought collaborative opportunities, either as funders or implementers. They were happy to have the chance to both give resources and also to work to implement projects and give out and work with the resources that they had received. with others in a more collaborative atmosphere, being able to reach out to those within the space. 60% actually reflected that they had pooled funds to fund their own programs. They had come together to create funds that would fund their programs. And 4% wished to design and execute conferences as a partnership and collaboration strategy. So moving on. So currently, we see that the levels of partnership during the COVID-19 pandemic, based on aggregated responses, 74% had said that they had partnered, 26% had not, and all in all, there was an increase in collaboration that took place. When surveyed, every single participant, every single respondent, those during the key interviews, during the surveys, had all unanimously agreed that collaborations that took place had been on the increase as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lots of feedback had come in to say that there hadn't been, in the most recent years, the level of collaborations that they had been seeing, as at when the pandemic had been done. And so basically it would seem like it took a period of crisis to show what is possible, what is attainable and achievable at this point. And so some of the key findings that we could draw at this point, building on the research, building on the data that we're able to collate and receive, will include that collaboration is still gaining ground as an operational concept in the development sector in Nigeria. Respondents from the non-profit sector acknowledged that they had been trusted by the COVID-19 pandemic to collaborate more than ever. Even then, it was not easily navigable, especially where there were imbalances in power. And imbalances in power, we could see, would refer to the fact that we had donors and funders on a higher scale of power as against non-profit organizations who were more implementing partners, but seemed or felt from their perspective that they were on a lower scale of power. During the pandemic, civil society organizations took on more roles supporting the public. Heavy reliance on development organizations saw an increase in partnerships, collaborations, and digital solutions adoptions. And so during this time, based on the data that we have been able to gather, we saw that there were particular partnerships, including the most visible one, the COVID partnership, that had been instated. But even at the rural levels, even at the regional levels, local government levels, state levels, there were partnerships, collaborations, and then also more non-profits were able to pivot, were able to scale due to the need, right, that came up at the time to digital solutions, to a lot more adopted cloud-based technology. We had a lot more non-profits adopt, social media platforms as a means to move along their messages, as a means to connect. WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, using avenues like LinkedIn, peer-to-peer groups to try and ensure that there were volunteers who were being attended to try and ensure that they were able to meet up and then take advantage of opportunities that were coming up at the time. While some organizations shut down due to inaccessible and non-flexible funding, most were able to revamp operations and pivot. And the reality was that, yes, there were organizations who let us know that they did not have the means, they did not have the funds to continue due to inaccessible funding. Opportunities were not coming aligned with their own missions. And then the funding that maybe a couple of them had was cut off. But most, we found out that speaking more and more, there seemed to be a sectoral resilience at play. And most organizations were able to revamp, were able to take advantage of digital solutions and then pivot. And then finally, most interview respondents highlighted the continuous factor of working in silos as a hindrance to effective collaboration. And this is something that came up more and more. Key respondents and those who we had spoken with, who had answered the surveys, had seen pre-COVID that certain organizations had not been as open to collaborations and partnerships. And it seemed to give this idea of that organizations were willing or believed that working on their own was getting them to where they needed to go. But the pandemic had shown that collaborations matter, partnerships matter, and then working in silence would do us no good. And so coming together would actually be of more benefit and more impact than continuing to stay in solitary, carrying out solitary programs, trying to having a kind of competitive spirit. So now we're here advocating for collaboration over competition, really. And then just to go over the final areas, what we had also noticed was that COVID funding, and COVID here will stand for the Coalition Against COVID, which was created last year, was mainly held, disbursed, and supervised by the government and private sector stakeholders. This reflected a debt in acknowledging the credibility and capacity of civil society organizations. And this is an ongoing conversation, an ongoing reality that we discover that most civil society organizations, there still seem to be, and a kind of disbelief in their capacity to carry out their project properly, to be financially accountable, to have the manpower necessary, to be able to actually handle projects on a large scale. And more than ever, we are beginning to see that this should not be the case. There should be a certain level of trust, a certain level of acceptance, and as compared to just working with NGOs, because we realize that the government and private sector stakeholders are more willing to give or partner with international non-governmental organizations and internationally acclaimed non-profits as opposed to newer non-profits, not giving them the chance to actually do what they want to do. And these are even non-profits that have the documentation, have a sort of track record, but because there seems to be a certain class or a certain level at which the NGOs have already set, a certain standard, so to speak, the NGOs might have set, and those who have been able to navigate their way around the NGOs have set. Newer non-profits, younger non-profits who are thriving, who are doing amazing things, not have the same opportunities, not have the same chance to actually work or to scale at the level that they could. And then also we realized that many non-profits and community-based foundations would rather have funders provide flexible, accessible funding than just programmatic partnerships. Now we see situations where for a short term, there is a call for applications that are accepted are those that are geared more towards executing a one-time program, or at most a program over a time period of 6 months, 9 months. And more organizations are realizing that this isn't in the best interest. This is not in their own best interest. And this really showed within the COVID-19 pandemic, because those who were able to highlight that were given one-time or programmatic funding or partnerships were those who were most vulnerable to shutting down operations. And then those who had access to more flexible, unrestricted funding, or funding that was more operations aligned as opposed to programs aligned, were able to actually scale and then revamp their operations. And so at this point, I'm just going to be placing a couple of quotes from organizations that we had spoken to, around how we have, for example, from the Nigerian Network of NGOs, there was a quote that really stood out around how we have pockets and retail partnerships happening both at the local government level, at the state level, and also at the federal level. Partnerships between non-profits and between the private sector, government and civil society. But the challenge is that we haven't really seen wholesale partnership, and we must achieve this to record nationwide growth. There are also a couple of other things that were noted, other quotes that really spoke to how we needed to move forward, right, as a sector, as philanthropy is, as far as philanthropy and development is concerned here in Nigeria and in Africa. And from WTI, we could see that a lot of organizations prefer to do things on their own because of autonomy and glory, and we tend to be solo players generally. But she sees more partnerships coming into play. And so words such as the need to keep on innovating and iterating the plans to suit those that we are really serving come up, right? Collaboration's been extremely important for an organization like the Lagos Food Bank, and they were able to collaborate really as a testament, right? They were able to collaborate with over 100 corporate bodies during that time in the face of the pandemic. They were able to stand resilient. So these are just snippets of the differences and then the realities of what's really going on within the non-profit space. And we're hoping to capture and of course encourage conversation around. Thank you everyone so much for staying with me up till this time. And then and I'm hoping that of course questions come up along the discussions. If you would want more information around the data that we have, around the survey, around the report that is soon to be published, please reach out to us at communications@philanthropycircuit.org. And then for more information, please visit www.philanthropycircuit.org. At this point, I will be passing the baton really over to Zara to really go into the next session of the panel, and then hopefully we're able to round up with some Q&A. So please stay on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that presentation. And we are all looking forward to the publishing of the report and being able to benefit from everything that all the research that Philanthropy Circuit have done. So I am just going to spotlight the videos for this next section, which is the panel section. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our panelists. We're just waiting for our second guest to switch on his video, and then we can get started. Awesome. Hope you can unmute as well. Hi, Kehinde. Are you able to unmute?
Absolutely. Hello, Zara. Hello, everyone.
Fantastic. Hi, Oyebisi.
Hi, Zara. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Awesome. Really lovely to have you both here. I'm really excited about today's discussion about philanthropy and collaboration as a catalyst for social change, because partnerships is an essential pillar for scaling any business, any project or any initiative, and expanding both our influence and our impact. And that's why it's so important for us as NGOs, as civil society organizations, as social sector and development sector players to leverage the power of partnerships. So before I go any further, just to introduce myself again, my name is Zara Zakaria Abdul Karim, and I am a social sector strategist and a community leader, an organizer. I run a number of NGOs and also consult for philanthropists and NGOs and help them to implement their projects. I'm also honored to be an executive committee member of Philanthropy Circuit, and I guess that's the hat that I'm wearing today. Before I introduce our panelists for today, it will be lovely for our participants in the audience to also introduce themselves in the chat section, because after all, this is a forum for partnerships and collaborations, and you never know, your next partner could be here in the room. So I can see that one person has introduced himself and shared his information. Awesome, well done, Emmanuel, for taking that lead. So yes, if everybody can follow in Emmanuel's footsteps and just share your name, your organization, and if there's anything in particular you're working on at the moment or you're looking for a partner for at the moment, please share your contact details in the chat section. It's a great way to network and connect with one another. So our first panelist for today is Ms. Kehinde Ayeni, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Leap Africa, where she's responsible for developing and driving the operational strategy for the organization and also people improvement. So welcome, Ms. Kehinde. We're very excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm very delighted to be here.
Awesome. And we also have Mr. Oyebisi Babatunde Oluseyi, who is the Executive Director of NNNGO, that's the Nigerian Networks of NGOs, where he leads and oversees the daily running of the organization. We're very excited to tap into your wealth of experience. You're very welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So before we jump into the main crux of today's discussion, something that I've done in the sessions that I've hosted during this period is just to have a little check-in with the audience, but also my panelists. How are you doing? How are you doing? And how are you adjusting to this new normal? We have lived through a pandemic. We are living through a pandemic. The last year and a half has been quite a roller coaster for so many of us, both in our personal lives and also our professional lives. So before we start talking about partnerships and collaborations, how are you? So I'll start with Kehinde. How are you doing?
Well, it's a new dawn and we've come to accept it. I'm doing very well. I'm coping very well. When you live in Lagos, you tend to appreciate this hybrid style of working much more than anyone else in any other part of the country. It's a good day. The weather is great. I feel great. I've been looking forward to this conversation and excited that part of the report was shared just to let us see exactly how we have contributed since the project started to the point where we are now talking about what exactly has worked for us in our respective organizations. So overall, I feel really good about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That's great to hear. And what about you, Oyebisi?
Well, it's the same here. Owning my skills on how to lead in a pandemic and how to build better resilience, including coping with the stress of daily challenges. So it's okay. Life is good, and
awesome.
We'll keep coasting on. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, it's all smiles across in the room, so that's definitely a good sign. Okay, so we're going to now jump into the conversation. And obviously, as we mentioned last year, we had the COVID-19 pandemic. It swept across the globe and really led to a lot of unprecedented changes across all sectors, including the development sector, and Nigeria was not left out. So this question is for you, Oyebisi. What changes have you observed in the way resources have been mobilized specifically, as well as the actual practice of philanthropy in Nigeria over the last year and a half?
Yes, I think for that period, we saw retail collaborations happening, just like that report mentioned. We did also see philanthropists now paying attention to local nonprofits, albeit not on a large scale that we would expect, but we've started something and that can be built upon. We also saw some level of losing grip on grants. For instance, some donors allowed their grantees to be able to make use of the support they've given them to pay salaries, to run offices, and also to support the vulnerable. So we saw that a lot. And that excites us, but it speaks also to the need for nonprofits to have regular resources or unrestricted resources that they can use for their work. We did also see a massive increase in the size of money that philanthropists gave. And the collaborations that also happened between philanthropists themselves, it was really, really massive. While for me, philanthropy, as it were, is a concept that has been with us for long. We're only just putting the nice English to it now as a sector. But we saw that massive giving and philanthropy. We did also see volunteering as a form of philanthropy also within that the COVID-19 pandemic itself. A lot of people volunteering and giving back and wanting to just help. Again, the collaboration between philanthropists also grew. And again, we do hope that it is something that we can grow and also find a way of sustaining, as it were. Again, some infighting, we noticed that within philanthropists, but was well managed. And we can again continue to understand that contestation that happens within civil society. But by and large, COVID taught us a lesson. It shifted focus to philanthropy and also shifted focus to the role of nonprofits, local nonprofits, in delivering good, as it were.
Awesome. I'm here taking notes. I hope everybody in the audience is also taking notes. No, that's brilliant. So I would like Ms. Kehinde to jump in here. From your observations, Oyebisi has highlighted, a number of types of partnerships that were happening. From your observations, what has the nature of these partnerships and collaborations been in the past year and a half?
So it's been demonstrated in many ways. So we've seen the rise of consortiums, for instance. In the past, when you want to apply for large grants, you would go alone and you work it out, slug it out, trying to submit hundreds of pages of proposal just to get it. And it's quite different now because, there is demand for you to partner with someone to give you more credibility and assure the funder as well that you're going to be able to deliver this in this peculiar time. And we also see the rise of co-owned projects. So it doesn't even have to be the consortium type, but the thing is the resources are slim, you're trying to stretch what you have. How can you make it work? The development sector is definitely one who likes to do things on their own. We want to shine, we want to do this on our own, even though we are doing the same thing. So there hasn't been that collaboration as it should have been from the beginning, but COVID has even forced us all to now co-own projects, now co-brand projects, and be more efficient in creating resources for the ecosystem. So there's no reason for anyone coming into the sector for the very first time. Like you say, there are younger organizations who are trying to find their path and their way, and the resources are now there because people are now learning to share, and that's a big deal. So that's part of the sustainable partnership that we have observed. We are also seeing where established organizations are creating capacity building opportunities themselves. And in some cases, it's part of a programming that the funders are asking because they want to ensure sustainability of the sector. So that's also happening and it's forcing people to collaborate. So those are the kind of dimensions that we have seen. Essentially, the funders are very careful in how they want to optimize their resources, how far they really want to reach. Before they could give an X amount of money to reach X amount of people. Now they want that X amount of money to reach X amount of people. And how's that's going to happen? So they're very careful. Also, when you have international organizations or corporate foundations who have been in the business for such a while, they're also quite anxious to have effective interventions. In the past, monies will go into doing activities and they're now questioning their return on investment broadly. And so that's even also forcing all these dimensions of partnership and collaborations that we are seeing. And let me even bring it home to Leap Africa precisely. Last year, we ran the very first edition of our program, the Youth Day of Service in Nigeria. And it sort of showed us that we could do something outside of ourselves with a lot of people. And a year later, from working with maybe 8 organizations, we had 27 countries participate. I don't even want to go into the number of participating organizations and individuals who said, yes, I'm available to come on board and do this for you. And so, it's also shifting the fact that last year we dabbled into COVID-19 response. We're a leadership development organization. We definitely don't give palliative. We don't do relief interventions outrightly, but we had to do that this last year, because we had to be sensitive to the political landscape. There's no use if your intervention was meant to do this and could be that, diverted into another way of solving the problem. If people are hungry or they're dying, nobody's going to listen to you about your so-called intervention or particular impact. And so that has forced us to also collaborate with more organizations. Some organizations we've never worked with, we worked with them for the first time. And lastly, to just close out on my point on that, is the fact that we were also able to serve as sub-grantors to our fellows and alumni. So we have this program where we have social innovators who are in the grassroots and in different sectors of the industry. And we went to them and said, you know what, we have partners who have come to us to say they want to do COVID relief services and respond or whatever, in whatever measure. How can you help? What can you do? How can you make this happen? And so we also found the opportunity to work with the people who were once our beneficiaries to now execute projects and implement such intervention. And so we've seen the dichotomy of partnership, collaboration changing and just having another look entirely from what it used to be.
Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kehinde. No, that's really great. It's also nice to hear a little bit about what Leap Africa are doing or have done over the last year. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that contribution. So I'm going to switch back to you, Oyebisi. In your earlier response, you mentioned something about retail partnerships. And there was also a quote from the report that Emma shared earlier about the lack of wholesale partnerships. So firstly, I would love you to explain to us what exactly is this concept of wholesale partnerships, and then go on to share, what should a well-executed wholesale partnership arrangement look like? Just unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Yes, so when we say wholesale partnership, we're looking at a partnership that looks at the value that each sector, each philanthropy is bringing to the table, including now saying, this is what we want to support that can lead to solving this problem on a large scale, looking at systems and providing that support that also guarantees the sustainability of the nonprofit. For instance, supporting a nonprofit for 1 year, 2 years might not really dent the issue that they are working on, but providing a 5-year support, all right, provides that leverage for that nonprofit, one, to understand the work more better based on their assumptions, address those risks and all of those bits, then progress to finding that balance and nuancing those solutions in ways that ensures that by the end of that 5-year support, for instance, you are able to solve that problem. Plus, within the implementation, you are able to attract the right level of talent to implement those bits. So you're getting the right people to sit in the room with those that will make decisions and to address those issues. That's the wholesale approach, we're thinking about, not the tokenistic. Of course, the tokenistic still happens, the retail still happens, and it's fine. It has helped us to get to where we have, but we now need to start thinking of that wholesale approach from who are the people that will implement this work? What capacity do they have? If they do not have the capacity, how do I help them build that capacity rather than leaving them? Even if they are new nonprofits, do they have a promise for holding the waters and ensuring that they can do this work effectively? That's the concept of wholesale partnership that we're looking at, not the one that just supports project components without looking at the big programs. Having said that, is to now say that whatever we do, that wholesale partnership must now look at value creation. Okay, so when we bring the money, what value are we bringing it into? How do we define value? How do we also ensure that the collaboration itself benefits that system thinking, that system approach for solving that issue? Then we're also looking at how do we ensure that we drive impact in ways that grows, again, both addressing that issue and also ensuring that that issue does not rear its head. Of course, it can take a whole lot of years for you to address one issue, and as you're addressing it, another one is coming up. However, you would have built the right capacity for you to be able to ensure that, both expected and unexpected outcomes are managed in ways that more professional. Of course, that wholesale approach also needs to look at the power dynamics, all right, that happens between philanthropists and their grantees. We have to manage those power dynamics in ways that ensures that if you pull off, all right, you don't upset my system, all right, but that you understand that as an organization, I should also be able to innovate. I should also be able to make mistakes that we'll learn from, and then use that to retool our programming and also how we deliver our work. That partnership also should be careful about gatekeeping, all right? Often too many times you've heard donors or philanthropists coming to you and saying that organization doesn't have the capacity, but we need an organization that has the capacity and that can move. And in my experience working at the Nigerian network of NGOs, I do know that some donor will take the risk and say, yes, they do not have the capacity, but they have the promise, and if we invest in them, they can grow. And that was what happened with us at the Nigerian network of NGOs. We saw donors that were happy to invest their resources in our growth, and where we are today was as a result of those investments. So if philanthropists then say that, no, because they don't have this capacity, we don't have the time, then it means that you keep giving the money to the usual suspects. And at some point, there's a life cycle of a nonprofit. There's a startup phase, there's a growth phase, there's a phase where you have stabilized, and there's always the crisis stage. Every nonprofit will go through that stage. So when that big organization you have invested in has now gone into that crisis stage, how do the smaller ones take over from where they have started? I think that this is the kind of thinking, the radical approach we must begin to bring to philanthropy as a client. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I said, I'm literally here just taking notes. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I hope that everybody is now clear on what wholesale partnership looks like and is, and how that differs from, like the retail collaborations or the tokenistic approach, which is not, we're not saying is bad. It has a place, but if we're trying to take it to the next level, then these are the types of changes and shifts in both thinking and action that needs to happen. Thank you very, very much for that. So I'm going to swing back to Kehinde and speak about advocacy and program execution in Nigeria. And with this shift in giving, what type of effects have you seen in those two areas, in the area of advocacy and in the area of program execution in Nigeria?
First of all, I must say that Oyebisi is enjoying wholesale funding from the way you spoke passionately about how people are investing in NGOs. So it's good to see that's happening.
I actually wish.
All right, back to the question, Zara. So first of all, why is there a shift in the giving? It's because there is a global crisis, and that always happens every decade or so. You see the global crisis in 2008, and now COVID has forced us into a similar situation where there is a pandemic. So the thing is, there is budget cuts everywhere you're looking. The corporates have cut their funding, the revenue isn't coming as much, but they still have to do all these things that they promised. Part of the strategy, is part of their corporate branding, if you may call it that as well, and many other things that CSR and giving and philanthropy is tied to. And so we need to first understand again why we have to rethink the mode of the way we run our business, the way we do our interventions or carry out our programs and advocacy. And so that's something that I want to first touch on. And then the second thing is, when we think about what sort of giving is happening, Oyebisi already talked about awesome giving, which I call institutional funding, where, from where I'm sitting, institutional funding is essentially what he has also described, where organizations are saying, we will support you, we will give you money to develop your organization, to ensure growth, stability, because people understand that money comes into the development sector, but they don't understand that only a fraction of it goes into resources. And these are the core mission support. And without the core mission support, who's going to execute this project? And so now there's more conversation on the table. You need to think about what percentage of this funding is going into our core mission support in order for us to fulfill this commitment we have with you. And more so, you know, the longer the partnership, the 5-year that Oyebisi was just describing, the better. Apart from institutional funding that can also be a long-term, like a 5-year kind of partnership, multi-year partnership it should be encouraged, and it's the kind of giving that organizations are giving to now. So when I say organization, I mean funders and grant giving organizations, because it's a lot of work. Every year they have to review applications, they have to onboard you into their programming, they have to show you how to do the reporting. It's a whole lot of investment, and that's why they're also shifting how they are giving towards organizations that will eventually execute whatever priorities that they have. And so as much as possible, people are lobbying to be in that box where they have multi-year partnership with these organizations, international organizations. Flexible funding, you know, I already touched on it a bit. The kind of giving we are also seeing is that they are giving money to pivot. So our situation, for instance, is a one-on-one experiential training that we typically do, but you know, because of the flexible funding, we've not been able to create those same curriculum into digital assets that we can use not just for now or just for one funder, but we can also repurpose. And that's the essence of, you know, optimizing your resources and having this conversation that could you know, let us do it this way or try it out this way, and so many other ways. And so an organization must be sitting in the space of innovation and flexibility. If you're going to be hung up on how you do your thing in a specific way, say advocacy, for instance, must be one where you're carrying placards. It's a bad example, I'm just saying, you know, that means you will not attract any kind of funding as the years will roll by and COVID or whatever thing is in the future, you know, presents itself. So another thing an organization must think about when you're thinking of advocacy execution is pivoting, being flexible, staying true to purpose and whatnot. Again, I would also like to touch on voluntary giving. I think during the opening, we touched on this a little bit. A case in point is Davido's situation where it reached 200 million in what, 2 days, 48 hours. That's to show that people are willing to give. And that's just a very popular example. There are other smaller examples, like many platforms that have been set up to give. I'm not talking about the GoFundMe now, but that's an example. But there are others, you know, attached to foundations where they are saying, we have a giving portal, give every month. More individuals are giving of their time, of their resources, because when we think about giving, people only think of the monetary sort of giving alone, but that's not enough. When your time is what, maybe 100K a day or even 100K a month, and you're going to sit that to an organization, that's also giving and must be captured as such, because that's an investment into the organization. So, you know, individual giving is on the rise. You know, more youth-led organizations are being supported by young people who are saying that this is a person just like myself doing this sort of thing. Why can't I support? Why can't I give of my time, of my talent, of my money, you know, into that? I think maybe lastly would be the fact that overall, you know, when you think about the future, you really have to rethink how you're going to execute it, just to close that out.
Of course. Of course. Thank you so much, Kehinde. Thank you so much. Yeah, a lot of very, very, very interesting insights that you've shared, which also corroborate what Oyebisi has also shared about this importance of this, as you worded it, institutional funding, which ensures you know, that long-term growth, that stability. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So we're getting to the halfway point of the session, and I want to switch back to Oyebisi now to just speak about, based on your knowledge and your experience, around funding in particular, some of the key learnings that you can share with the audience around engaging with nonprofits in Nigeria. So yes, you have all this experience as an NGO. What are some of the key learnings and that you can share with us around funding in particular?
I think we've gotten to a stage where we need to now understand the economic impact of nonprofits, and then use that to value nonprofits, plus also stop seeing nonprofits as paupers, right? We do this work because we want to help the vulnerable. And you can only support us in doing this work by giving. But when you give, let it be from the place of value, let it be from the place of seeing the bigger picture and ensuring that you provide that enabling environment for these organizations to deliver effectively and meaningfully to the constituencies or the beneficiaries that they have set out to support and help. So what I'm trying to frame here is the fact that fundraising is a bigger part of the work that we do as nonprofits, okay? And we would always come to everybody. And, you know, the Davido case is a classic case in point, from how celebrities can fundraise for causes that they believe in. And it helps us to situate that role of individuals volunteering, individuals interested in also helping the common man on the street who probably will not be able to get that support because government is not able to provide that support. Now, having said that, is to now say that there's a level of capacity, basic minimum, that you would need to look for, which I am, in any nonprofit organization. However, usually, those basic minimum capacities are not there, okay? But the passion is there. And we've continued to preach to say, let's move from passion to business in ways that ensures that, yes, you've got the passion, but you've got the right metrics of good governance that can help to drive and sustain that passion. We are getting there. But as we advance into getting to that stage, like I've said before, there's a minimum level of investment that can also catalyze this movement. And this is where I think I would need philanthropists to please focus on helping organizations, small nonprofits and medium-sized nonprofits to be able to grow and to be able to fill the gap that they are filling. For instance, there are some communities I can't get into because, you know, I don't understand the dynamics, I don't understand how it works. However, organizations already working in these communities are able to make a huge impact if we are able to channel those funding support to them. So maybe we now need to start looking at fiduciary processes where, for instance, you give the money to triple NGO. Triple NGO, for instance, bears the risk. I'm just citing an example, all right? Not necessarily to give to triple NGO. And bears the risks of investing that resources in these nonprofits. And also provide a minimum level of accountability for us to get the results done. Is while this is a possibility, there's the fine line between us just dumping the money at them and allowing them to do the program the way they have, you know, they've conceived it and the way they think it can work for that environment. That level of micromanaging, we need to, you know, take it off. I'll give you an example. When I took over as executive director of the Nigerian Network of NGOs in 2012, the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law would give us some little amount of money, $10,000, $20,000. But it was flexible for us to do what we wanted as Nigerian Network of NGOs, right? And it was that support from 2012 that grew Triple NGO to this stage of being able to analyze the sector, being able to develop some non-profit research, being able to have some level of thinking around what the sector should look like regulatory-wise. And it helped us also to think through what our role should be as a network without competing with our members. So if you look at how small that amount of money is, it was an investment that was worth it and that allowed us to do what we wanted to do as the Nigerian Network of NGOs. Of course, that support, that investment grew to the $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 and all of those bits. But when you look at that investment and to where we are today, we owe it to those kind of support from ICNL, from Civicus, and from other partners elsewhere that decided to invest in us and to help us grow to this stage. And we're still growing, all right? And we're still learning a lot of lessons along the journey. So, but we now need to focus on local philanthropy, where our local philanthropists understand that, yes, it's good to do some of these social causes, but that advocacy is also important for us to get government to do the needful, providing an enabling environment for nonprofits to work, but also for some of the issues that we're talking about to be addressed, putting in place laws and systems that can address many of these issues that nonprofits have been talking about. For instance, let's talk about the recent issues around gender-based violence, okay? There's a level of advocacy that has happened. While some nonprofits provide shelters, provide help, the level of advocacy that has happened where states are now having laws. Some states have gone into building shelters. Some states have also gone into providing some level of empowerment for those that have been affected, shows that that wholesale approach to addressing this issue is now important, from supporting nonprofits to do the shelter, to go into the advocacy side of work, to go also into the accountability side, where they're mobilizing citizens to hold governments accountable to what they should naturally be doing. So it's a bunch of work, and I think we now need to move away from safe philanthropy, all right? So a philanthropy that actually hits the nail on the head and supports what it should be supporting.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's very, 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 very powerful. I can see you on the House of Assembly floor speaking to the lawmakers. Such passion, and it's definitely you're definitely an asset to the sector, and I'm really excited to continue to engage with your work and continue to see the growth of NNNG. I'm very excited for that. So yeah, lovely response. So we are on our last question for today's session before we open up for Q&A. Emma, I hope that you're collating any questions that have been coming in. I can see that there's a lot of activity going on in the chat, which I always like to see. So if you do have any questions, this is a good time for you to put your thoughts together, drop them in the chat section so that we can ask our panelists. Please, you can see that they are on fire. So if you have, this is the best time to get them. If you have any thoughts, if you have anything you're planning, if you need any advice, please pick their brains. I'm giving you permission to pick their brains. So don't be shy, ask your questions. And so we'll be waiting for those to come in while I ask you both this last question, which is that as CSOs start to plan towards a new year, what kind of advice would you give them on best practices in philanthropy and on collaboration? So what should they be thinking about? What are some of the best practices? What are some of the, we've spoken here about systems, we've spoken about, building up the organization. What kind of things should they be putting into place as the new year, as we approach the new year? So I will first ask Kehinde to respond, and then Oyebisi to close off for us.
All right, so the first thing I'll say is the last point you raised about systems. So any organization that is, planning towards the coming year and targeting philanthropic donation and things like that must have a very strong standard that is beneficial for them to maintain their own ethos, because they can be lost in the scheme of things. I'm not sure, I think it was Oyebisi that mentioned something close to that. And it's a reality, if you're not clear on how you do your work or how you run your business, you're going to compromise your strategic direction. just because you want to be a part of this movement, or you want to be a part of a project, or you want to receive funding from a particular individual, because philanthropy is big and we have more African philanthropists who are willing to give hundreds and millions of dollars to nonprofit organizations. So you have to be very careful. What are your ethos? What is important to you per time? How are you going to, receive this funding? Be very clear in your communication as well to guide your conversations with them. Also, for you to prepare for the new year, you also must understand the anticipation of the other party. So these people are looking for organizations that are sustainable and well-grounded. And so they're also looking for organizations that are responding to times and seasons. If you're not any of those things, you're automatically disqualified. And so the work now is, what are you going to do differently? Where are the gaps in your work, operations, interventions, or how you're even branding or marketing your work? Because sometimes they do great things, but they are not saying it that way. And so some people don't even understand, funders don't understand, is this the right person? Is this the right fit for us? Because everybody's looking for fit. And so it's quite important that, you are positioning your organization as one that is responding to time and season, one that is also thinking of sustainability. It's not just about now. Are you growing your endowment fund? Do you have an endowment fund? Do you have a reserve? How diversified is your funding? Are you just receiving funding from only one source year in, year out and expecting someone to give you a huge sum of money to implement your project? It's not going to happen. So you need to be thinking about the future, how sustainable, what's the perspective there? Also technology, as you're planning, how much technology is in the operational side of things right now, and how much of it can you adopt in future, because it helps to cut costs at the end of the day. And sometimes when funders and the philanthropists are asking, where is the innovation? They're basically asking, what is the digital transformation aspect of your work, of your organization, and how you're thinking about it? So my suggestion is, you should be looking towards technology now. If you haven't done that rigorously, you should be investing in technology. What processes are being digitized? Now that we are forced into a hybrid situation, I'm hoping that people have now used a lot of technology to ease the way they are working and to improve the results they are getting at the end of the day. And also, it's also important that CSOs understand that philanthropists are looking for organizations that are solving root causes and not symptoms of any aspect of your intervention that you're playing in. And so you need to be thinking about the 360 system level. I think Oyebisi mentioned that already, systems level thinking. You need to be talking about this thing that I'm addressing, where did it originate? If you're not there, then you need to be thinking about it. Otherwise, you're just going to be another MPI or CSO, that is playing in that small space when your desire is to really be playing in a bigger space. So you need to be thinking about a few things like that. So I think that's a few things I'm going to share on that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kehinde, for your wealth of knowledge and experience that you have shared with us. Definitely some amazing tips, even for people in the room who are not CSOs. Even if you're a founder yourself, if you are running an NGO, an organization, these are some very critical tips that you have given us, and I hope that people have been taking notes and will start to implement those changes. It's not going to happen overnight, particularly around technology and building out your systems, but you have to start somewhere. That's definitely an experience that I have had as a founder. Start somewhere. Start with organizing your documents, for example, before you start saying you want to invest in some huge system. Start with just organizing your documents and your folders and being able to find things year in, year out, and build up from there. So thank you so much for that. And we'll have Oyebisi to share, to also share your perspectives and advice for those best practices.
Yes, I mean, we just received a masterclass from Kenny on how to project work for 2022, and they're all valid. I think for me, without repeating what she has said, is to now say to nonprofits that we now need to start looking at issues around language and framing. Most times when I go into meetings, I've heard nonprofits say, nobody has given me any cover, I'm the one doing this myself. And I say, can we change this narrative to, my name is Oyebisi, I run a nonprofit that helps young people to have better access. Using my own resources, I have invested 500,000 Naira this year alone to be able to do this extra. And that changes that narrative of, I'm the only one funding it. Yes, you are the Bill Gates of this time, providing from your little resources to fund, except that yours is not large. So those narratives are changing the language and the framing is important for 2022. The other is for you to be able to mention and capture how much you have invested in your organization from your own personal resources. And this comes to the areas of bookkeeping and accounting, having a separate account for the organization and giving the organization a donation that is annual. I've always advised nonprofits to say, yes, for 2022, I'm going to give my organization 200,000 Naira. You can put that in a note and you can say how you give the 200,000 Naira. The first tranche will be 50,000 first quarter, second tranche will be X. Let us see that transparency and let us see that money go into that account and let's see how it is being spent. Such that when you now stand up at a meeting, you are able to conveniently say that between 2021 and 2019, when we started, I have invested from my personal resources XYZ amount of money. Now, when you use those kinds of narratives, someone would say, hello, what do you do? How can we help? Because they see that you are structured and the framing has changed from where it used to be. Yeah. The other is to also understand that system thinking, that 360 approach to solving the problem, from the root causes to the assumptions that we all have, to the perceptions, to what is driving those problems. So you must be a master of that issue. Of course, nuancing them from what you have seen. Of course, bringing the sentiment, bringing the bias, but then ensure it is evidence-based. So for instance, if you ask me, how many nonprofits do we have in Nigeria? I will tell you, I do not. However, evidence from the work that I'm doing at the Nigerian Network of NGOs shows that we have XYZ amount of nonprofits by my projection or estimates. All right. That helps you to know that, yes, I don't have that data, but it's data that I'm happy to track. I am tracking it, and I'm having some level of projections based on that. And I can nuance that evidence based on the work that I've done. Our work has moved from the sentiment to providing evidence. So for instance, if you work in Ikola community in Lagos, for instance, be able to tell me everything about the Ikola community in ways that shows you, man, this is the expert, this is the guy, this is the organization we need to be talking with because they have the right statistics, and statistics can be political and technical, all right? So you understand that, depending on who you're talking with. However, be sure that you can defend whatever data you are reeling out, and that you are also on top of those issues as the master for those areas. Then your local, thinking globally, acting locally would also then come here. We've got into a space where we can't afford to be lazy about reading. We can't afford not to check our emails. We can't afford not to check our spam folder. We can't afford not to subscribe to newsletter of organizations that we know can give us information and new thinking and fresh thinking. You can't afford not to participate in surveys where you are providing your input and experience and also finding ways to let them know we are here. All right, so there are a lot of tactics and strategies that we must pay attention to going forward in 2022. But I must tell you, this is the best sector to work in only if you would organize and not agonize.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. If you are not gingered by the end of this webinar, then maybe you are not in the same room that I am in, because I'm definitely gingered. Working in this space sometimes can be frustrating. It can be tedious. You can sometimes feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall, but the breakthrough is coming. And, days like this and, conversation like this, I hope it serves to refuel you. I hope that it serves to just validate the work that you are doing and the effort that you are making, and hopefully just give you the tools and resources you need to pivot and make the shift that hopefully will bring that breakthrough that you're looking for. So I hope that you're feeling energized and encouraged, because I definitely am. And I've been taking a lot of notes today that I will be going and implementing in my organizations as well. So thank you to our wonderful panelists. It's been such a beneficial session. I'm using one eye to also look at the chat to see if there are any questions that have come through. I think I can see something here that says, should funders be pooling a small percentage of funding geared towards strengthening local resource mobilization ecosystem? Let me try and read it to make sense of it first. As part of related questions, what kind of coordination would you like to see from funders? So should funders be pooling a small percentage of funding geared towards strengthening local resource mobilization ecosystem as part of a successful exit strategy? Do you know what I'm going to ask? I'm not sure I'm capturing the first part of the question. So I'm not sure if Samira, if you're able to unmute and just ask it, it might be a bit clearer coming directly from you.
Sure, Zara. Can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah, hi, thanks everyone for sharing the insights and the panel discussion. Speaking about local resource mobilization, I guess the question was, there's a lot of collaboration and coordination on the parts of not-for-profits and civil society. What are the areas that we would want funders to coordinate and collaborate, because it will make things easier for civil society as well, and I think it needs to be a two-way street. An idea was, what about funders, regardless of whatever you are supporting, pool in your funds to invest in strengthening the local giving ecosystem as part of a successful exit strategy. And that can be a multitude of things, like enabling environment, or making it easy and effective for people to give, or for civil society organizations to register. And there's a multitude of factors, but I feel like this area does not see the light of day enough and does not get enough investment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samira. So yeah, I think we can take that question, and then we will ask Katlego to also ask his question, and I think that might be all that we have time for today. So who would like to go for that one before I pick somebody? Okay, Oyebisi.
Ladies first.
Okay.
I thought that was your question, Oyebisi.
Okay, I'll go for it. I'll go for it. So, Samira, very excellent thinking, and you're very right. We need a lot of investment in the enabling environment space, and that is one thing that one of our donors have done very well for us since 2012, helping us to do some work around the enabling environment space. We also need to incentivize giving, and that would go to issues around our tax laws, ensuring that when individuals give, all right, they are tax exempt, and then we can now grow that space. And it's important that we have some level of investment for work that needs to be done in that space. The other area that I do think that we also need some level of investment is the ability to attract the right talents into our sector. Our sector at this time now needs people that can do communications for development effectively, that can sit at the table with multilateral organizations, with government, with the private sector, and innovate around many of the issues that we have. So our work is now getting to that stage where we can't afford not to be able to pay those talents that need to come into the sector and give us the results, all right? So we need to move the conversation from this is charity to this is real work that needs to, at the end of the day, translate to impact for the common. So these are areas that I am beginning to say to myself, if we really need to get serious, then there should be some level of investment in these areas. But you started the conversation well by steering us to start thinking about that percentage that could go to building local philanthropy, creating an enabling environment, and also incentivizing local giving, including developing fundraising strategies and alternative sources of funding for our work, from charity shops to lotteries, to boxes in big restaurants and all of those bits. All of this has to come together at some point.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can just, okay, go ahead.
1 minute to add something. I've seen Katlego's question now.
Okay, super. I just wanted to say that, you know, there are organizations who are actually ready to give in response to her question. So it's to really find, is there someone who is already giving and investing money in this particular area or to this aspect of my work? You may be surprised that people are, it's just that the criteria is very stiff or very high. And so we need to work around being able to qualify for it when you do find it. The other thing is as though Oyebisi is in my organization, these are the conversations we are having because they want you to convince them about the work that you're doing, and you can only do the work you're doing with the right talent. And so talent conversation, succession planning is an ongoing conversation year round in my own organization, that we're constantly saying, how can we attract the right talent into this sector? Because some of them are not even here. They are coming from the corporate, they're earning a lot. And for some of them, they are thinking of it as a pay cut. So how can you convince them? What is that thing that will make it attractive for them to drop that high-end job or that incentive paying job to come and take this one that is just about, you know, breaking even, where they are not going to be borrowing at the end of the month? So there's a lot that's going into it. And I think that the last charge is to PC, Philanthropy Circuit, to educate us about opportunity. Are there people who are existing here in Africa, in Nigeria? What are those styles? How is it that we can tap into it more? How can we sell ourselves more? Essentially, I'm giving them more work to do.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And I think that you know, the question about talent and succession planning, I've just highlighted it. It's such an important topic, and one that requires its own stage, even to speak about how do you attract talent into this area, and how do you plan when you have a founder that is, you know, putting their drive and passion. How do you plan so that your organization can be sustainable in the long run? And what kind of infrastructure do you need to put into your organization to achieve that? Okay, so I'm going to round up with the last question from the audience. This is from Katlego, and he wrote that with every new grant cycle from various donor institutions, there is a mushrooming of a number of NGOs competing for the same resources as established organizations, which does not improve issues around capacity building. How can we ensure that we dismantle the idea of competition and encourage movement building at local, national, regional levels? So Kehinde, I'll ask you to start with that, and then we'll wrap up with Oyebisi's thoughts.
All right, so it goes back to the first thing we started with, collaboration. So, you know, for instance, if you're targeting the Gates Foundation funding, that they will roll it out at a specific time in the year. I mean, if you're anticipated to receive funding from such, you should be following their calendar. You should also be shopping who's going to, you know, go with you on that journey, you know. So you don't start the process when you are there midway. You have to also you reach out to the organization. I want to apply. It will be beneficial for both of us to apply together. You know, that way it limits the competition. So 500 people would have come into the pool. Because we have now teamed up, there's now 250 people competing, or there's now 150 people competing for the same fund. Wherever it is and whatever it is, competition is going to exist. It's never going anywhere. We are all competing for the same fund, and we just have to look for our own strategy. What is our strategy to compete for this fund and win it? Because sometimes you can scale level 1, level 2, and then they drop you off on level 3. You know, the goal is to get the funding at the end of the day. And to get it, you must check all the boxes and ensure that you're doing it right.
Awesome. Thank you. Oyebisi, final contributions?
Yes, I think for me is one, nonprofits must understand that not all funding is good for you, and not all funding is for you. So first, when you understand that, it eases the burden on the philanthropy organization or the donors themselves, because you know the call is for HIV/AIDS, and you're trying to find yourself in HIV/AIDS, trying to fix yourself in it. That that gives a lot of application, means a lot of application will come. And like Kenny said, Humans by nature, we are competitive. The fact that there's a call for proposals means that we are democratizing the application space. So we're not restricting it. All of you come with your best ideas. Let's have a pool of those ideas and let's see who the best would be. For me, that is not a problem, okay? Because again, you must give everybody the opportunity. And it would be good if donors can then pay more attention to all of the applications coming in. And maybe for purposes of application, I know they can be a lot. Now, some donors will tell you, we are happy to provide you feedback on your proposal after 3 months or something. I think we should bring that system back, where when you look at that proposal, this proposal, we're not selecting you for XYZ reason. And you can come back to that organization for why. I know some can ask, some will say, ask us if you want us to respond on why. We should bring those systems back. What that system helps you to do is that it helps you to build the capacity of that organization to understand why they were rejected. And they can use that to work on that. I know it's a lot of work for the donors themselves, but I think nonprofits should also start asking, why was my application rejected for purposes of us learning, all right? But the competition would always be there. And I've always said it, people give to people, okay? And when you understand the fact that people give to people, there are some funds that won't come to triple NGO because triple NGO is not the right fit, even if they like my face 100%. And there are some that will come to triple NGO because it is triple NGO that has been doing work in that area, that is known, that is a thought leader, and that when you search online, search everywhere, it's triple NGO that you would still see. So my sense there is to say that while donors will continue to have that pressure because we have very few of you, can you already help us so that the 220 million Nigerians, and we have about 100 million of them that can give to nonprofits, we can tap into that individual giving, which is the most sustainable anyway. And we can tap into that, then reduce the pressure on traditional donor systems or traditional donor organizations. But these are conversations we need to keep having because whether we like it or not, these trends will continue to be there till His kingdom comes. And we can fully ensure that we do our best. And that best is what we all appreciate nonprofits on this call doing. And let's continue to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a really, really fantastic session. I'm moderating, but I have learned so much from our speakers, and I appreciate you taking your time out to contribute and to share from your wealth of knowledge. I think that this is also part of the giving back. This is part of the journey that we are all on in this sector. And so I appreciate you all so much. I appreciate everybody who has taken time out of their days to join us as well. And I really hope that it has been a beneficial session for you also. As I said, my name is Zara Zakaria Abdul Karim, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Zara Z Abdul Karim, and you can also connect with me on Instagram at zara.zakaria. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all, learning from one another, seeing and supporting the work that you are all doing. It will be amazing, Oyebisi and Kehinde, if you could drop in the chat section how people can connect with you, whether via LinkedIn or if you're on Instagram. If you'd like to share your email address as well, that will be fantastic. If you can share that in the chat section, it will be highly appreciated. Everybody smile as well, because I'm going to come back and do a screenshot of us in this section. So if you could just do a smile now, I will come back and do a screenshot from the recording. It's been a fantastic start to my day. As I said, I'm buzzing. It was honestly a masterclass. So thank you all again. We want to stay true to time, and we're already 2 minutes over. So I'm going to give you all an opportunity to copy the contact details of our panelists, and then we're going to wrap up there. Emmy, do you want to say anything before we close off the webinar?
I think you've done such great work, Zara. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Oyebisi, and thank you, Kehinde. It's been really amazing listening to everything that has been said and really just reiterating what we know to an extent, but really need to hear over time more and more. Thank you so much. It's been so engaging. And to everyone who was able to join in, I could see that the chat was just buzzing. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for sharing your questions. They were so well received. I mean, thank you for your time. We appreciate that times are busy, but you took our time to join in and really this is how the sector grows. This is how information grows, how connections are made, how collaborations, right, are made. So we look forward to just continuing the conversation, to just getting to know a bit more of what you do. I'm always on the lookout on LinkedIn, right? So what everyone is doing and where we can all come in and just make the sector better, make the space better, make African philanthropy better. Like I said, please be sure to check us on our website. We're on across all platforms at Philanthropy Circuit, to see where we try as much as possible to curate these convenings, to curate other convenings, because I could see a lot of familiar names and even faces while the discussions were going on. So it's always great to have everyone come together. And I hope that we have a great rest of the day. Like Sarah said, I am bored and I am supercharged, right? So thank you for your time. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye. Have a great rest of the day.